So just yesterday I finished the season 2 commentary of Avatar The Last Airbender, and I must say it was quite alright, and as I said, I will do, this is the season review vlog. Now the last one was, or the season 1 review was of just about 38 minutes, and I don't know how long this will be, so this will be fun. You can see from the title and from the length of the video. So, I was going to write a little notepad thing about what I want to talk about, but I thought that would be a bit too unnatural for me. But whatever. So I'll just make stuff up as I come along. Okay, I have a general idea what I want to talk about. So first off, the overall feeling I have of the season. Well, first of all, it was a lot better than the first season. And it was overall a very well good, very nice season. I liked just about every episode. I mean, every episode had their strong parts, and every episode had strong parts, and they had good things, and there were literally no wasted episodes, in my opinion. People will disagree with me, but yeah, that's the point of why I stressed it's my opinion. I do think that there were weaker episodes, of course, and many episodes had a lot of bad things with them, but overall it was good. It was really damn good. I really enjoyed it. If I have one big thing to say, or one thing to complain about, that's the series has a very minor problem with pacing, but that is a very minor, so small that you should not even consider this. But I'm going to bring this up because this is basically the biggest nagging point I have for the majority of the series. The series does not know how to do pacing all that well, except for certain episodes, and the season finales have been paced quite well. Okay, the season 1 finale did. The last 2 episodes were. The last episode was not that well paced. Neither was the second to last. But I'm happy to say that this time around the finale was very well paced. There were no gripes with it, and I certainly hope that nobody else had any gripes with it. The pacing has been all around the place, and they have done some magnificent things with it, and it's not that bad. It's not so bad that it breaks the flow of the story, and since they have gone with a sort of an episodic format, even though they have moved the story in the second season towards more of a story focused, so that there's a one grand overarching story that they focus on. They still have an episodic format that allows them a lot of levity to how they pace the season out, which makes it so that it doesn't break the flow of the story that even though the pacing is off in some episodes, which is very incredibly hard to do, and is only actually possible to do with this kind of episodic format, basically. There were some episodes with really bad pacing, but okay, not really bad, that bad really, not really that bad, but there were episodes that had a lot worse pacing. But I am probably the only guy that really emphasized pacing that much, so that's probably not something anybody else should consider. That's something that just a personal point of mine. The story overall was very good, even though I have said this quite a few times at the end of or when we approached the end of the season. They have, well, of course, everything has been already done, and you can hardly bring anything new to the table. And so they have taken a lot of influence from classical literature and use classical storytelling methods and storylines, and they just borrow very heavy elements from different stories. For example, the hero's journey is very heavily used throughout the series, but that's not bad. That's definitely not a bad thing, because those are tried and true things, ways to enhance the story, and in my opinion they have helped the show's pacing, especially in this second season. And for a classical literature geek such as myself, okay, I'm not that geek, but I'm not that crazy about classical literature, but I do know some things. It is very novel to notice the similarities and the borrowed storylines, and it's very good, and it makes for a fun minigame, I suppose. It's fun. So that's by no means a problem. It's actually very good that they have taken influence from classical sources. One other thing that we have seen throughout this episode or this season rather, has been the heavy influence from different cultures. Like, even though it's a Western show, and it's, if I'm not mistaken, it's produced in America. You can correct me on this. And it's made by Americans. That's what I'm sure of. Okay, I'm not sure of that either, but if I remember correctly, it's produced by Americans. But they are by no means being closed-minded about anything. And in my opinion, the show is a very good representation so far of a multiculturality of the world, since there are so many different cultures in the world, and we get to see majority of them. And they are very different, but there are, technically speaking, no cultures that are speaking bad of. And every culture has their strong points, and everything is very interesting, and they are very interesting to follow at the very least. And that's very good, and that makes this show very entertaining, as well as very good political study on the historical effects of historical studies on, well, cultures. So we can actually see, like, many of the cultures are influenced by different real-world cultures. For example, the Earth Kingdom is very heavily borrowing from China, and just in general from the Eastern countries. Middle Eastern. No, not Middle Eastern, the Far Eastern. Like, well, Asian countries, basically. And, well, the Water Tribe, if I remember that correctly, they are very heavily borrowed from the, what you call it, Eskimos and Inuits, and on that sort of indigenous tribes, which I can't remember the general term for, but those anyway. And I could go on and on about the different cultures, but that will be saved for another video. But yeah, I like how they have a very good representation of the world, and how wide it is, and how different people are throughout it. The overarching story is a very simple one, and we only get, like, the main goal of the this season just about in the halfway, if I remember correctly, which is the Great Library episode, if that's the name, I can't remember, in which we actually get to learn what they want to do, which is go to Ba Sing Se. And they also, well, Appa gets stolen, and that's a very big driving force. Until then, Aang was just looking for an earthbending teacher, and then if I'm not mistaken, they were still heading to Ba Sing Se after that. So their motives are clear, and they are very unambiguous. We have a very clear idea what they want to do. And that's good for an overarching story, because it keeps it simple, and it makes it easier to easier to connect the episodes together, and thereby it makes the story a lot more easier to follow. And that's good. That makes it so that, since this has been a weekly show, or it was aired as a weekly show, I know I've been doing about an episode a day. Because it was a weekly show, such an overarching story which is easy to follow is a very good thing. It is not that good for, like, a daily watching series, but the show's strength is not the overarching story. It's very basic, and there's nothing exemplary about it to write home about, but it does its purpose. It gives the heroes a goal, and that's its purpose, and it does that well. Um, but yeah, the overall story is being well. But what is more important about the story elements, overall story, is how just about every episode. Well, okay. In the first season, since it was more of an episodic format, every episode was focused on one central theme. Here in this season, we get a more of a cluster of topics per episode, which I would say is a bad thing since it makes the show a lot less focused, since they cannot concentrate on one issue, but they handle many of the issues very quickly and offhandedly, so that it makes the episodes they seem a lot more focused than they actually are. Even though the weak point about that is that they really brush some issues by the wayside. But on the other hand, they have done this magnificent thing, which is they address many of the issues during several episodes. For example, the romance part of the story is handled throughout majority of the series so far. And it has been a very, very important undertone to the whole series, because it was the main thing holding Aang back in the end. And that's a very interesting thing to talk about, think about. They think about the central themes, but they don't focus on many of the themes for one episode, and instead they bring up topics more naturally, should I say. And that makes the show a lot more believable and natural, should I say. At least that's what it feels like to me. So that's the overall feelings of that show. The season was freaking amazing. It was very good, and from storytelling perspective, it was very good. The focus to overarching stories, connected by this episodic format, they have struck a very good balance, in my opinion, about that. Since majority of the episodes are not that episodic format, so they are very heavily connected to the overall story, and they started doing that flashback previously on Avatar thing, which was very. It was a good reminder that they have a overarching story, which is really that clear. But it emphasized that is what they are focusing on, and they focused on it very well. And they only showed in those flashbacks the most important scenes of those the episodes, which more emphasized that they are focusing on an overarching story. The resolution for that story and for the season was, to put it frankly, amazing. It was awesome. It was awe-inspiring. It was divine. It's one of the best season finales ever, simply because it went against common expectations. I was fully expecting Zuko to turn out a good guy. And frankly speaking, I still expect him to turn out to be a good guy, but that will be conversed later on in the video. So yeah, the story was very good, especially the finale. That's one of my favorite finales ever. Then let's talk about something about every element of the show in more detail. Like, first off, let's take the animation, because that's the most simplest thing to talk about. So, I'm kinda glad that they did not use that much CG, because, frankly speaking, it's blatantly awful. The CG is pretty bad. But I have a way too high of a standard for that. And what they did was, they used it so rarely that it stuck out very much. But fortunately though, it didn't break the feeling too much, because they didn't fully use CG that much, or too much in my opinion. And it made it stick a bit better, still not good, but it was a bit better than it could have been. So the CG was not that big of a problem, considering that they didn't use it that much. And then the overall animation quality, it stepped up quite a bit actually. They still have the same animation style, and the animation is one of the weakest parts, and at the same time it's one of the strongest parts. That's kind of confusing to say, but basically the frame rate is bad. They have purposefully made the show or animation seem a lot more, it's not jagged, but it's very twitchy. I wonder, how could I describe it? It feels like there are frames missing. But that's more of a stylistic choice and an economical choice as well, since it saves quite a bit of money actually. It takes a while to get used to, but once you get used to it, it's not that bad. Now, on the other hand, the animation is very good for the most important things, which are bending and characterization. Why did I do this? Strange. Whatever. So the bending is just gorgeous. They have made the bending look really good, especially the more fluid parts, which is basically everything, since they have, it's a very strange thing that they make the earth bending seem so fluid. Like, even though it's earth and it retains its heavy properties, it flows like water basically. Yeah, more like water rather than air, should I say. But at the same time, they have made it so that they have animated the earth so that it retains its properties. It's still heavy, it's still durable, and it's still freaking powerful. But it has motion, it is fluid, and it's done so that it's not basically just throwing rocks at people. So it's fascinating how they have managed to do it, so that they have combined the features of both earth and water into earthbending, so that it feels still like earthbending. And it definitely could not be mistaken for waterbending in any way, other than having some freaky similarities to it. Like, for example, that went off was, I don't know what you would call that, rock surfing? That was interesting. And the characterization part, on the other hand, they have freakishly huge faces, mostly eyes, but they are a lot more natural than in majority of animes, at least. So, but they are still very exaggerated, especially the eyes, and that's actually a very good thing. And they use this to their advantage by displaying their characters' emotions through pictures rather than words, which is that's an excellent method of storytelling, since it's, well, show, don't tell, you know? They show the emotions rather than telling us about how they feel. Of course, the people or the characters do act naturally, and they do react with words, but their first reactions are always with faces. Their emotions and motions, since nobody is okay, this is one of actually kind of I just realized this, but people do stand very passively, but that's a lot more natural than moving around constantly. But it makes them seem more like puppets, but then you see them actually moving, and it looks so natural that it's kind of hard to describe, but it's the thing that like, they don't have any passive motion, which normal people do have, but it's not so jarring, and with clever framing and cutting and editing, it by no means makes it seem unnatural. And they have very well made up for that part with emotions and showing their faces and how they react to things, because that makes them seem more human, and that distracts us from the fact that they are not moving passively, and they still react with their bodies completely when things happen, so they don't look unnatural. And that's the basic thing what animation should do. Then let's talk about sound design, because that's one of the very good things about Avatar, which I really want to emphasize, it's very good, but there's not much to talk about, unfortunately. I have listened off and off. I have listened to on and off some of the soundtrack, and while it most certainly is not bad, it's background music, and that's the purpose of it. I mean, the songs are pretty good. Like, they are something okay, maybe I could not listen to them by themselves that much. Few pieces here and there are so good that I do want to listen to them on and off, even while not doing anything. But majority of the songs or the background music is just that. It's background music. And what it does, it reinforces the story and the mood of the story. And it does that well. And that's its purpose. And you should not expect anything else from a show. And the music is it's stylized, simplistic, and yet influenced by different cultures. And even though the majority of the songs are very heavily influenced by Eastern traditions and Eastern instruments, as well as some of the African instruments, kind of African culture, it still feels like its own thing, and that it's not ripping off any other culture. But it is influenced, but that's not bad. So, yeah, the music is good, but it's neither overbearing, neither too exciting. It's good though still, because it does evoke the emotions that it should, and it does that well. So yeah, I want to talk more about music, but I can't. There's simply nothing to go on about it. The songs are fine. On the other hand, sound effects are perfect. That's one of the key things for earthbending, is that it feels like they are moving rocks, even though it looks so fluid, because the sound effects reinforce that idea so well. The sound effects are spot on. There's nothing wrong with the sound effects. They are so good, really good, especially for a show that uses very heavy elemental forces. The fact that they have captured the sound of those so perfectly is very important, because that's the central theme. It is so good. The sound design is nigh perfect. I have very few complaints about it, and I can't come up with any real complaints. Voice actors are another very strong part. They are very important for the show, because, well, they play the major roles, and that's where we get majority of the story from. And they already fit their part very well. And I already talked about this in the season 1 review, so I won't be going over this. But the voice actors are very good for everyone. Their voices fit their characters perfectly, and they reinforce the idea that they reinforce the character's main personality trait really well. That's what I think, but I can't really go on more about it other than that. I'll talk more about it when I talk about characters. Actually, I might just talk about characters now. Do I have anything else to say about before I go on to characters? I want to talk about the main central themes that they addressed during the show, because they have addressed many issues, and they have handled them well. They have handled them very well, but many issues are something that they should have really... I would have wanted them to have more episodes. Like, I know Nickelodeon doesn't allow for many of the issues to be handled that much, or at all. And I would have preferred them to handle, or at least touch on those topics a lot more, but unfortunately though, that could not be done, and it could break the mood. So what do I know? I'm not a freaking designer. but I would have preferred that they would have spent more time dwelling on some issues. On the other hand, they, as I said, they focused on moving the story forward, which they did. They dealt with issues, and they dealt with them quickly and efficiently, and effectively as well, while giving them a fair representation and not leaving anything out. But there were many themes that I would have liked them to cover. One of the interesting things about the show is actually how spiritually focused it is. Since it is the whole thing about the Avatar is that he is the physical reincarnation of the will of the world. That's kind of crazy explanation, but whatever. He's the freaking idea behind just the Avatar is something that I very much enjoy. Even though it's very simple, it's very cliche. Well, I'm gonna get flayed for that comment. It's cliche, like, it's used many times, and nobody could deny that. If they want to, I could point to many tales from the ancient Greece and Romans and Chinese and everybody. But the fact that the Avatar concept is simple doesn't mean that it's bad, because it's not the complexity of the idea that makes it good. It's the execution, which in this case is very perfect. The fact that the spiritual world in this is very different from what we consider the spiritual world, which is often considered as the afterlife. More like the Judeo-Christian afterlife, if I should be more correct. Many different religions have different ideas of afterlife. And it's a very interesting part of the show, because that has a lot of potential. They haven't untapped majority of the potential that the spirit world or the issue of spirit world has, but they are slowly using it to they're using it not as a plot device per se, but more as a spice for the story. It enriches the story without making it more complicated, since they don't want to complicate the story anymore, or they don't want the story to be too complicated, so they don't want to go into a lot of detail about the spirit world and, well, how it's linked to the real world. They could very well go on to long explanations about it, but that would require a lot more time and effort, and that would definitely kill the pacing. So it's good how they just addressed it, but I would have preferred an explanation, but it would have killed the pacing. So I'm happy with what they did with spirituality. I'll just freaking go on and talk about the characters, just because that's one of the show's biggest strength. Is its characters. Like, even though the characters are okay, I have been mulling over this idea and how to present it, but it's kind of hard to say. So I won't say that the characters are stereotypes, but they are stereotypes in the same way that real people are stereotypes of something. And what do I mean by that is that majority of people on Earth can be attributed with having one driving attribute to them, and that is what is, it doesn't define that person, but it more so is the driving attribute behind them, and it very heavily affects majority of their actions. And even though they are driven by one attribute, and this could be more than just emotions, it could be, or by attribute I mean a very nebulous thing, it could be basically anything. And even though that attribute may not have anything to do with their actions, it still has influence over them, and it's hard to explain this. Even though people are attributed with one thing, it doesn't mean that anyone is one-dimensional. People are affected by everything, and nobody can be just attributed to one simple adjective. And that holds true for the show's characters as well. Like, you can very, very easily go over each character and give them one simple personality trait. But, even though that is true, and they can be done, that's very easy to do, but they are a lot more complicated than that. Sure, you get the general idea of Sokka being the humorous person, and Katara being the motherly person, and Aang being the child, and Zuko being... Actually, Zuko is kind of a hard to attribute to anything, because any single thing, because he has changed a lot. But he was, in the beginning, he was vengeful. Now he is seeking retribution. Now he's confused, I suppose. That's a way, that's how I describe him. But even though they could be attributed to one word, that does not in any way describe the complexity of their characters, since everybody has their strong and weak points. And that's a very hard thing to do, so that it comes off naturally without looking like a silly cliche done for the sake of the show, so that it feels a lot more natural while feeling unnatural. But in the show they have done it so that it feels very natural, because they feel human, and they have just about every emotion that normal humans have, and they portray them very well. Okay, maybe Azula is a bad example for this. Azula is perhaps an exemption from this, because we have not seen that much of her. Well, basically the antagonist trio is exempt from this, but that's because we haven't actually spent that much time with them, and I think that's actually pretty good. They were more of an looming risk and looming danger over the Aang gang, and they were always a very huge threat that we had to keep in mind, but they were by no means the driving force behind the story, and they were not the focus of the story, because that's not what it should be. Even though it's interesting to look at the world through evil's eyes, that's not a very good way to go around about the story. And what they did with the story is very different from that. So we didn't focus on the bad guys much, and that's because they did not have that much importance. The show had very heavy focus on world building and realistic events. As realistic as they can be, considering that you can throw fireballs out of your hands. But that's beside the point. Like, even the side characters that they meet are very human. And that's very interesting, because they are very fun to see. And they have issues that would be very realistic for any group that's struggling. And that's very good. Even the animals act more like animals. Like, Appa could be very closely compared to a dog in its binding to his owner. His friend. Let's say it that way. Even though Aang technically owns Appa, they are more like companions rather than a pet and an owner. Which is cool, I really do like. Okay, then I'll move on to talk about every single character. Well, not every single. I'll gloss over the majority of them. Let's go with the antagonist trio, because they are simple. Ty Lee is the agile one, if I remember. She's fun, she has a crush on Sokka, and that doesn't actually feel that unnatural. It feels pretty... It fits her well, since she's the childlike person of the group. And she's pretty good. But we did not spend much time with her. And we didn't need to. That's the point of her. I can't remember the silent one, but she's just bored of everything. She wants more excitement in her life, and that's her simple defining character trait. Okay, maybe she's a very big character now that I think about it. But she has such minor focus on her that it doesn't matter that she is rather weak character because he's just a support character. Then the head of the antagonist trio is Azula, and my gosh, she is a very good villain, I must say. She's threatening, powerful, creepy, scary, and at the same time inspiring. Awe-inspiring, but inspiring nonetheless. And she's very powerful and possesses a real threat. And she's by no means stupid. I'm very happy that they didn't just throw her away. She wasn't just the villain of the season, which is very good. I was surprised about that, but I was glad about that because it made it. She seems a lot better. She's a very good villain. I do like her. I'm not gonna go into more detail. She's cool, but I want to see more of her, and we do get to see more of her. I'm certain of it. I don't know if in the first episode of season 3, but whatever. She's cool. Let's brush over some other characters. Nah, let's not brush over side characters. Appa was one of the cutest freaking animals I have ever seen, and the story that the Appa's Lost Days episode, if I remember correctly, whatever, that was one of my favorite episodes, and apparently it was nominated for an award showing animal abuse for its showcase of animal abuse, and I'm very glad that it did get nominated for that, or it did get the award. I can't remember. It probably got the award for it, and that's very understandable. I very much enjoyed that episode because it was one of the best moments of storytelling through showing and not telling. It had very little dialogue in it, but it portrayed so many events through it just by showing us pictures, and we saw different parts of the story, and that's good. That's very good. I very much enjoyed that. I really did like Appa. I still like Appa. Appa is amazing. He's so cute and cuddly and powerful and deadly and extinct race. That's kind of sad. He's the last of his race. Whatever. Suki. She's again a strong female character. I have nothing else to say. She's a good, strong female character, and I don't know. She's a good character, but we didn't get to see a lot of her. I do think that she's dead. I am very certain of that. That's kind of unfortunate. But you can prove me wrong. I will be proving myself wrong. I wonder what happened to her. I mean, I know what happened to her, but I wonder if she's alive. I think that she's not. Then let's go over the main characters, because they're the main protagonists. First, let's talk of Iroh. I'm not going to address the issue of his voice actor dying, because that's sad and I don't want to be sad. But that was nonetheless tragic, and it was a touching addition to the story in the Tales of Passing Say, whatever. I can't remember that episode anyways. It was a touching part. Now, Iroh as a character, on the other hand, he's one of my favorite characters. Very probably in the top 10, possibly in the top 5 of all characters of all time from anything. And because he's powerful, wise, and goofy, and yet seems very human, and his interactions with Zuko are interesting, and he's the main driving force behind Zuko's change, and that is very good. I think I very much enjoy that, and he is very, very entertaining to follow, and I do very much like him, and I can sympathize with the points he makes. I just freaking love Iroh in many ways. I'm gonna talk about Zuko last because he's my favorite character, actually. I'm just gonna name that he's my favorite character of the show so far. Maybe Aang will go over, but whatever. Sokka. I actually freaking love how Sokka is represented, because I was afraid that he would be just a comic relief character like Iroh, but instead both of them are important characters, and they are by no means bad. They are not stupid. They are not weak. They are Sokka in particular. He's a proficient soldier and a great tactician, as well as an engineer and a mechanic at the same time. He has very admirable character traits, which make him very easy to well, not to relate to, but he's very easy to relate to as well. And he is, even though I don't laugh at his jokes, it's very important for a show to have some. They handle very heavy subjects, and he brings some happiness to them, or something that makes them a lot more lighter. And that's very important, because otherwise it would have been quite dull. It would have been interesting, but it would have made the show less if Sokka was deadpan character. But obviously then it would be a very different show. But yeah, I do like how Sokka is represented. And in this season, why do I keep saying episode? We get to see more of this human side of him, and how, well, we get to see more of him, and he comes to his own in this season very well. And I do very much like how he is a complete character. And even though he's by no means have led the group, he feels like he could very well be a leader. I mean, he's technically speaking the prince of the Northern Water Tribe, whatever, the water tribe that they came from. He is the prince of that tribe, technically speaking, which actually someone of you pointed out, and that was a good point. I like Zuko. Sokka. I like Sokka because he's portrayed well, and he's a human character. He's a good character. I like how he's done. Then let's talk about Katara. While on the other hand, I would have preferred her to have, I don't know, I wanted more of her. She has progressed from the character she was at the end of the season 1, and she has shown more of her human side, and she's by no means just a one-trick pony. She has very heavily defined character traits, but those are not her only character traits, and I don't know. We got to see more of her even negative emotions, since she has been angry throughout the series, and sad and depressed, and she has been a character. I wanted more of her. I can't say anything. I can't say much about her. Then let's talk about Toph. She's amazing. She's simply the greatest earthbender alive. I mean, she's amazing. I freaking love everything about her. Like, one of the fun things about her is that because she's blind, they can make a lot of jokes, and she says I can't speak today. She says majority of the blind jokes, and that makes her seem a lot more human. Like, she can joke about her situation, and that's fun. I like that, because she has come to terms with her being blind, especially since she can see through vibrations on the earth, but she is not afraid to, well, she's afraid to lose her sight, so to say, but she still does give it up when they have to fly, and in certain situations. And now that we got to see her metal bend, she's even more amazing. She is simply speaking amazing. She's fun, she's strong, and she's a good female character, and an important one to the story as well. I just like her in every way, and she poses a very good she complements Katara very well, because they are very diametrically opposed characters. Because rock is steady, water is fluid, and they represent their elements very well. That's I just freaking love Toph. She's amazing. I can't say much about her. If you watch the commentaries, I've talked about Toph a lot. I like her a lot because she's fun and cool and powerful. And then let's consider Aang. No, Zuko first because Aang is the main character. Okay, so Zuko shows us. I compared Zuko at one point to being the flip side of Aang because their destinies are very, very, very much entwined. They are two sides of the same coin. Well, kind of. But their destinies are very much tied together. Or more so, Zuko's is tied to Aang. What should I say about Zuko? Well, the most interesting thing about him is that he has undergone many changes. He has suffered a lot. He has went through trials. His spirit has broken many times. But he has always got back up and mustered forward. He's a very inspiring character, but he is by no means a role model you should inspire to be. Because he is not sure of himself yet. Actually, I still would recommend to take him as your role model because he's very admirable. Because he faces hardships and he overcomes them and he masters through every problem that he has. And he does so very, very, very admirably. I very much like. I want to talk more, but I'm just confused and tired. Just Zuko is very, very good, cool, and interesting. He is my favorite character, simply because he has undergone the most changes throughout the show. And currently, the story is as much about Aang as it is about Zuko. In the first season, Zuko wasn't such a big player, but during this season, we got to see, well, Zuko was one of the most important characters. We got a lot of episodes. Zuko had his own episode. Just had an episode just for himself, where we got to see more of him. He is one of the most interesting characters to follow because he is human. He is perhaps the most human character of them all, and he's very relatable in my opinion, even though he is the prince. But who of us, who hasn't faced hardships in their life? Who hasn't had to make hard choices, and who of us have not denied the call of destiny? Who of us have had to wrestle with what is the right thing to do? He's very much a great anti-hero and a very good protagonist and an antagonist at the same time. He shows us that there are no two sides, there are no good and bad, there is no good and evil in the war. There are only shades of grey. And that's very much what I like about him. But then I'll talk about Aang. Okay, Aang is possibly the most perfect character of the show. No, Azula would be more of a perfect character, but that's besides the point. I think Aang is a perfect main character, so to speak. And he's a very, very good vessel for the Avatar because actually it's kind of hard to separate him from the Avatar since the idea of Avatar is a very, very nebulous concept given to Aang because he's just the reincarnation of the Avatar and his life is linked with the other avatars and it gives him the proficiency to master multiple bendings and that makes it very interesting. Why am I so confused currently? Okay, so Aang is a very good main character, not only because we got to see him be human, we got to see him enraged, furious, and we got to see him portray his wrath. The episode, which I can't remember the name of, showed us very much that his most important friend is Appa, and when that was taken away from him, he could not control himself that much, or as much as he should have. And we got to see him being human, even though he is literally the savior of the world. He could not just, he was just not, he's not only the Messiah, so to speak. He handles he doesn't just accept his destiny, or he does, but he wrestles with it, and he has problems with it, but it's not through his actions that we get to see him grow as a character, but it's his hardships and coming to terms with his destiny, how we get to relate to him. Even though that we cannot relate to his issues, we can relate to his emotions. I don't know, I'm just picking out my ass. My delicious uneaten ass. It's very interesting at the end how we got to see like Aang to become a fully fledged Avatar. Aang has to become something more than human, so to speak. Well, he has to become more than a human. But how he handles that issue is one of the most intriguing things about the show, because even though he accepts it, he fights against it passively, and it's very interesting to see. I like that so much about him, and he's definitely a very good main character in the regards that he is both relatable, and at the same time he is his own character that is influenced by many of the heroes of past, as well as the history of the show, history inside the world of the show. It's interesting to see that his character is formed by how he wrestles with his destiny and what he's meant to do, what he is meant to become, but at the same time being himself and doing things his own way, and not always doing the right thing. That's a very important thing, that he doesn't always win, he doesn't always succeed, which was one of the best things about the finale, was that Aang was wrong and he made mistakes, and it was very close to him paying the ultimate price for that, and that was very cool. I liked that a lot. He is a very good main character. I don't know if I can't say anything that's bad about him, because even though he's a child, he's still portrayed as the child that he is. But it doesn't seem unnatural for him, how he reacts, and that's very important. He's a relatable character, and an understandable one. Okay, I think I'm done rambling on. So overall about the season, it was a very good season in every way. We got a lot more character development, we got a lot more character focus, the story was great, the story progressed a lot, we got to see the plot go forward a lot, we got things, we got events, we got everything I wanted. I was very happy about it. I'm very happy about the whole season. It was so good in every aspect. There are very few things I'd like to change about it. Maybe some episodes, maybe some minor things here and there, but those could have been fixed with time and money, which is not things that companies care that much about, but artists do. but the season overall was, it's one of my favorite seasons of anything, if not the favorite actually. I have very hard it's very hard for me to say anything that any other season would trump this. Maybe I'll be proven wrong and I'll say that season 3 is the best. I certainly hope so. But so far, yeah, this has been so enjoyable. And so, that's my season review. I'm happy about that season. I'm very satisfied with it. And most of all, I'm very satisfied with how my channel is going right now, and I'm just overall happy about life. So, and I have mostly you guys to thank for that. I have already, I thank you so often, but I cannot, I hope you're not getting sick and tired of it, but I can't express my gratitude enough. You are what makes this worth it. Well, no, it's intrinsically worth it, but you make it even better. And I enjoy the multiple conversations we have in the comments, and I enjoy just that people are paying attention to me. I'm see, that makes me sound a lot very selfish, but I am a selfish person, so whatever. But I have you to thank for watching me, and I have you to help me go forward, and you have helped me actually get a better view of things, and I very much appreciate you sticking with me so far, and I hope you continue to stick with me for the last season. So until then, I suppose. Thank you very much for watching. This has been a long and a rambly video, but I hope you got something out of it. I wanted to give you as much of my opinion as naturally as I could have given it. So I hope this I hope you like this, because I certainly did. It's fun to just ramble on about something you enjoy. And I enjoy rambling. And I enjoy doing this. I just enjoy doing videos overall. So, thank you very much for watching. Leave your thoughts and opinions and prove me wrong. Give me your opinions. Just freaking say first in the chat, comments. Whatever. Just do whatever you want. Give me your opinions. Like, I want to hear, like, do you have anything, well, what are the bad things about this season? I very much would like to hear what other people think were the bad things about the season, and do you agree with me on the pacing issue? Because I might be just crazy, more than clinically, I suppose. But yeah. So without further ado, thank you for watching. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next video. Gunmoo out.